Okay, Mr. President, you can go to slideshow. We begin so that I can do the introductions.
Okay.
Slideshow.
Is it not showing?
No, it's showing now. Go to slideshow. Where it's written slideshow on the menu bar on top.
Okay.
You click on slideshow and begin from, from the beginning. Yes. Okay, now, just leave it there. Let me do the introductions, then we can begin.
Okay.
This is Sunday, 23rd May, 2021. Welcome you, colleagues, to today's session. That's our 9th session of our webinar series. Today's topic is teaching and assessing summary. And our presenter is no other than our very own president for Lataz, Mr. Patson Mukuba, who is an accomplished language teacher, examiner, team leader, and administrator. He holds a bachelor's degree from the University of Zambia. He has taught English for many years, and he has been an examiner for quite a number of years as well. Mr. Mukuba is a very passionate language teacher. And apart from just being a teacher and an examiner, currently he is serving as the Senior Education Standards Officer in charge of languages for Copperbelt Province. While he has been president for Lataz since 2016, the association under his leadership has opened its international gateway through the International Association of Teachers of English as a foreign language and the African TESOL. And he has represented this association at a number of international conferences. From this experience, he shares with us the teaching and assessment of summary. Mr. President, I welcome you to today's webinar series. And as usual, the webinar is live on YouTube, and it's also being recorded. We'll ask our dear audience to mute their microphones while the presenter is making his presentation, and we will entertain questions and contributions when our presenter is done. Mr. President, welcome once more, and the floor is now yours.
Thank you, Mr. George. And welcome viewers, listeners, and the participants. This is yet another session that we have today. And my hope is that after the discussion, our teachers, our learners, and everyone will be able to sharpen our skills in order for us to present summary teaching in the way it is supposed to be done, and also assessing it. You know, as teachers, we need to assess our learners, and we need to have a know-how on how best we can assess our learners. Here we are looking at the requirements of a teacher as well as a learner. So it is very, very important that we pay attention, and also if we have questions, let's take note, and at the end of it all, I will answer them if I am able to. So as it is, we want to go straight into business. So we are talking now about the teaching summary. As usual, when we teach summary, it begins as far as grade 8. This is where we introduce it in a note form. So we need to realize that before summary was tested as an independent entity at the junior level, it was incorporated in comprehension, and therefore teachers did not teach it independently. But now that it has been introduced, so it's very, very important that we also look at it and see a way forward. So having introduced summary at junior level in note form, because there our learners, our candidates just need to identify the points that are supposed to be included in a summary, either in numbered form or even a bulleted form, as long as they are presenting a summary by answering the question that is prevailing at the moment. So that is an introduction of summary. And then I will very much concentrate on the senior levels, beginning from grade 10 up to grade 12, where we need to understand it very well. Now, from the two, at junior level, we have the note summary, and at senior level, we have the prose summary, and it is this format that the latter is developed. We begin with note summary, and then we develop our prose from the information or from this note summary. So pupils should be able to differentiate between note summary as well as prose summary. And when they cross over to senior grades, they need to concentrate on prose summary. Now, furthermore, we need to take note that anything other than a prose summary at senior level runs short of expectation. So we need to emphasize to our learners as they come into grade 10, we need to maybe introduce them slowly to the prose summary, because if they continue with the note summary, even up to grade 12, they will lose marks at the end of it all. And this is what we don't want our learners to experience. That's why, as teachers, we need to emphasize the fact that a prose summary is what is desirable and not a note summary. Now, if pupils are to pass the examination, the school certificate examination in Zambia, so it's important that they concentrate on a prose summary and not a note summary. Now, you will find that a passage which is presented for summary usually has 20 or nearly 20 points that we are looking for. It's not always that a passage will have the 20 points seen clearly from the passage. Sometimes points may be less than 20. Other times points may be more than 20. But what we need to do as teachers is to teach our learners the skill of summary in order for them to achieve the intended goals. Now, it is also worthy noting that the steps that are followed for reading a summary passage in class or wherever it is are similar to those of comprehension passages. It's just like in literature where a passage is given, so that passage must be comprehended. that passage must be understood clearly by our pupils. How do we make them understand the passage clearly? So literature, comprehension, summary are almost the same. We teach them in this almost in the same way, because our interest is to make our learners understand the passage so that when questions come, they're able to answer that question with ease. So that is the essence of introducing that passage, meaning that when that passage is introduced, a teacher needs to spare time for discussion of points of vocabulary, just like in comprehension and in literature. When you introduce a passage, you read it through with the pupils, then there are certain vocabulary points that need to be discussed with the pupils so that they are able to understand the passage fully. And also there are certain constructions. We may say there might be idiomatic expressions within the passage that may pose a challenge to the pupils or the learners. But as teachers, when we go through, we need to ensure that these points of vocabulary and constructions are understood by our pupils. You know, there is a lot of contextual meaning within the passages, which our learners need to understand. And this is the role of a teacher. You know, a double period lesson in class is enough to teach our summary. You know, due to maybe the difference in the ability of the pupils, a teacher may find that even a double period is not enough. So here, I want to encourage you that when you go to class, you see that this time is not enough. It's better pupils grasp the concept of maybe understanding the passage that day before you go to maybe the questions. So this is very, very important. Sometimes you may not finish in the double periods, you may not finish all what you've planned to do. You can plan for reading, you can plan for discussion, and you can plan also for the understanding of the question. Maybe the 80 minutes you finish, and then the next time that you meet your pupils, you will be able to finish that particular passage and then give them an exercise. So it is very, very important. We are teaching summary. We are not testing. The test can only come after we have taught. And I've said the steps that we take to teach summary are not different from those of comprehension and the literature. Now, when you discuss the passage, as I have alluded to earlier on, we want our learners to understand the passage with a view to answering the question that follow. You know, there's only one question that follow after a summary passage, and this should be understood and be answered fully. Now, once you go through, you give learners time to actually ask questions, and you can also, as a teacher, ask deliberate questions on the vocabulary, on the idiomatic expressions that may be found in the passage in order to make them understand, and also learn to teach them to understand the contextual meaning of a particular even they are able to answer the questions in full. Now, after you've done so, you are assured that the learners have understood the passage, the learners are very familiar with the passage, then you can divide them into groups or in pairs. So you divide them in pairs and then ask them to attempt the question. Sometimes you may even ask individuals to attempt a given question. There is only one question after a summary passage. And this is the question that they need to answer in line with what the passage is talking about. Now, at this point in time, if a teacher has time, he or she may discuss answers to the summary passage as a follow-up of the exercise. So after you've given them, they have discussed with their partners and they've come up with the answers to the question. Then it is at this point that you may want to discuss the answers with them in class. You have a passage, they have a passage, they have answered already. And as a teacher, you also have the passage and the answers. And then you go through to show them that this is what they're expected to do. Now, after that, you can go on and mark the books because you need the feedback to the pupils so that they realize where they have gone wrong, where they have done well as a teacher, as well as the pupils. There's need for feedback. So a teacher can now allow the learners, as you go through, to make corrections and also realize where they went wrong and where they did well. And after that, you wait for another summary lesson. You know, this is a skill that can not be grasped just at once. It is grasped after a period of time. So now, depending on how often you give them this exercise, they'll be able to grasp the concept and apply it in order to answer a question, summary questions with the confidence. So basically, this is what to do when you are teaching your learners. Now, I also want to draw your attention to what is supposed to be taught in class. So what learners need to know about a summary. So I've actually done some teaching points that we need to understand. Firstly, the learners have to read through the passage. You may, as a teacher, read with them, or you can ask them to read, or they can read silently. So the first reading is simply to acclimatize themselves, to know what the passage is talking about, not necessarily meant to answer the questions, but to just acclimatize with the passage in order for them to be ready to answer the questions. After they have read through, at the end of the passage, there is a question. So it means that learners need to read and understand the question. So it's not just a matter of reading, but they need to understand what is it that the question is asking them to do. So once they know exactly what the question is asking them to do, just after reading the sentence, they will even realize that, oh, there are certain sentences within the passage that are giving me these answers. So after they've read, they've understood the question, then they need to read now each and every sentence, whether it answers the question or not. So now they go back now. This time, they are not reading like they did at the first instance. This time, they are reading each individual sentence. This is in order to assess whether it answers the question or not. This is a skill that can be grasped over time. The first sentence they read up to the end. The next sentence they read up to the end. All the sentences, after they have read that sentence, they need to relate it with the question. They ask themselves whether that particular sentence is answering the question or not. If it is not, they go to the next one. If they suspect this sentence is somehow answering the question, then it must be identified by underlining that particular sentence within the passage. So sentences that answer the question should be underlined. All of them. You on leaving out those that are not answering the question. And these identified sentences are likely to be part of the summary. After all the sentences have been treated in this manner, the pupils need to copy all the identified sentences into one text. And this is likely to be the summary that we are looking for. Okay, now, after they have combined the identified sentences into one text, they need now to count the number of words one by one to come up with the given word limit. You know, there is a word limit at the end of it all. And the pupils need to just be with the confines of the rubric. This is very, very important. They need not to write few words. They need not to write more words. They just need to be within the given number of words. You know, there's a danger when learners write very few words. There's a danger that there's a likelihood that they might have missed some important information. And when they write beyond the given number of words, they will be penalized. So as teachers, we need to ensure that our learners just answer the summary within the given number of words. Now, the other point that I want to put across is that learners should not exceed the limited number of words, because this will contribute to the loss of marks. Now, here, the only words that are allowed as the excess are only 5. So if the passage is saying in not more than 113, learners can go up to 105. If the passage is saying not more than 140, learners can go up to 145. So they need to know that only 5 words are allowed. This is probably to enable them complete the last point that they wanted to make. It's very, very important that learners receive this information. Okay, so this is what we need to know when we are actually teaching our summary. I've already said our learners cannot grasp the skill just at once or 2 times, but over time, they'll be able to grasp the skill. And I want to assure you that summary is something that our learners can get 20 out of 20. Once they understand the procedure and the way to go about it, then they will be able to answer a question and get 20 out of 20. It's one of the simplest exercises that our learners can attempt. Okay, having said so, let me look at a assessment of summary. How do we assess the summary? Here, there are certain things that we have to bear in mind. Firstly, summary is backed by impression. When you read this through, you have an impression. Now, the mark you award to the summary should represent your final impression of its value as a whole. So in doing so, 2 methods should be used in the forming of this impression. The first one, marks awarded to each point made. Here, we are talking about now assessing or marking summary. So when a candidate makes a point, then you award the mark to that particular point, if it is in line with what is expected. So now, what should we consider? The fact that not all points are clearly and convincingly made, and the tick after each point should be accompanied by an appropriate mark. not necessarily the maximum. In this case, we're talking about the maximum of 1. So the maximum point that the maximum mark that you award to a point is 1. Now, you may find that there is a situation where a point is not coming out as clearly and convincingly as it is in the passage. And because of that, you may not award a full mark. So just where the point is done at the end of that line, within the body of the summary, you tick and give it a mark, either half or a full mark, depending on how clear and how convincing that point is. So this is one thing that we have to talk about. Now, the other thing is a mark of 1 to half should accompany each just on top of that's where the point has been within the body of a summary and at the end of that particular point. Now, the assessment and the clarity of expression. Here now, we are talking about a point that covers the fact and the clarity of its expression. Now, we are looking at the question. The question is, Lena to do. So as they bring up that point, we must cover the fact. The fact is coming from the passage. And the clarity, the way it is coming out of the passage, is the same way that Elena must express it. So if these 2 points are covered, then a full mark is awarded. The addition of the marks awarded to each point will act as a guide to an impression mark for the whole passage. So now when you do, you give marks to each and every sentence that has been written. Now, the addition of those marks within the passage will guide us and will act as a guide or will guide us to an impression mark that we have for the whole summary. So you count them, and at the end, you actually write that particular mark. So that is the impression that we have for that particular summary. Another thing that we have to talk about is a note form summary. Remember, I first started by looking at the note summary at junior level, and then graduate to the prose summary. Now, in a case where a candidate writes a note form summary, how do we treat it as assessors, as teachers? An answer that lists the points, but is in good sentences, should be penalized only slightly on impression at the end of the summary. So regardless of the language that is used, there's no mistake. The child has written very well. As long as it is written in note form, then it must be penalized slightly at the end. An answer that is not in sentences should be penalized for expression in the normal way. So that particular summary lacks expression. And because of that, even if they have done very well, they should be penalized at the end. Maybe if they have, you have given them 18, you can subtract by 2 as a penalty for not following rubric. You subtract. If they have written, if they have scored 2 out of 20 and they've written a note summary, then the 2 will be knocked off. And the summary will score 0. So all these should actually be emphasized in class. The other point that I want to talk about is the rubric, which warns that the candidate must not use more than the given number of words. So here, what we are saying is, apart from what has been given by the examiner in the passage or in the summary passage, an assessor must count each and every word that has been written by the candidate, one by one, There is nothing like you count the first line, then multiply it by the number of, it's just word by word. You count them. If it is 135, you go 1, 2, 3, 4, up to 135. Then an addition of 5, it goes up to 140. If a candidate has written more than 140, then you count up to 140, you even draw a line with your red pen, meaning all excess words must be cancelled. You draw a line, you cancel before you even start marking. The first thing that you do is you count. Thereafter, you cancel whatever excess words have been written. So that way, the candidate will penalize themselves. Now you'll find that because of irrelevancy and the child has written up to 140, if there's no point within those words and the points are coming after the 140th word, then that summary will score 0. So all these must be taken into consideration. In terms of irrelevance, not all summaries will be done in the way we expect. Sometimes there will be irrelevance. EPUs will just be picking and write something that is not even in line with the expectation. So here we are saying there is no specific penalty which should be imposed for such a summary, as long as we have strictly applied the rule of counting. Then irrelevance will penalize itself. So as long as the candidate is not writing as expected, they have written a lot of irrelevant things, they should not be considered. So that is what we can talk about. Now, I also want to talk about the using own words. In other words, paraphrasing. It is not wrong for a candidate to paraphrase. It is not wrong for a candidate to use their own words other than what has been given in the passage. What is wrong is to drift away from the information in the passage. That's the more reason I want to encourage you that it's better our candidates confine themselves to what has been given in the passage than paraphrasing, because when they keep paraphrasing, they may drift away from the fact, from what is written in the passage. Sometimes pupils may feel knowledgeable and may want to write in their own way. As long as they've written contrary to what the passage is talking about, that paraphrase will not be given a mark. So we are encouraging them to actually intelligently lift the sentences from the passage and write them the way they have been presented in the passage. Again here, I want to say that from inception, I've talked about identifying sentences that are answering the question. So as long as the candidates have been tutored in such a way that they are able to identify a sentence that is answering the question, that is better. You know, a sentence may have more than one point. So in terms of points, in terms of coming up with points, that is the part of a teacher, that is the part of an examiner. Our pupils should be taught to identify sentences that are answering the question and put them as part of the summary. Because what I've said so is because a sentence may have more than one point. It may have 2, 3, 4 points, as we are going to see later. But if our learners are able to identify that sentence, then they will have covered all the points that are within that particular passage. So we encourage them to actually identify those sentences and write them the way they appear in the passage, and use just a few words to connect them to make sense in terms of expression and in terms of standing with the requirements of the question. So, but if they are lifting unintelligently, then they'll be penalized. So they need to also to think. So that is what I can say about words that or sentences that are paraphrased. Now, another point that I want to put across is that once a summary has been presented, or the pupils are writing a summary, a point that comes out should be written the way it is. Now, in case that same idea, that same point is repeated later on in the passage, it must be ignored. There is no way, there's no need for our learners to raise a point twice. One will be ignored, the other one will be given a mark. Expressions that are supporting a given sentence, examples that are supporting a given point should not be considered. Even the illustrations that are supporting a given point should not be considered, because it has already been said in a point that has been raised. So if a point is raised, whatever supporting information in terms of expression, in terms of examples, in terms of illustrations, must not be considered. So pupils should be able to see that this is an illustration to this point, this is an example to this point, and those things must be left out. If they include them, they will actually misuse the little space that I have for those points that we have. Okay, so now, having said so, I want now to substantiate this by looking at the 2020 question paper, where we had a passage and also the answer that I did. Now, what I've done is I've just done 3 paragraphs and probably 8 points from the 3 paragraphs or 8 sentences that are answering the question. I want to show you how we should be able to come up with the points from the passage. So this is the next exercise that we are going into. Okay, so this is the 2020 passage that came last year, and you and I are going to follow this and see how points are extracted. The first paragraph for this point says, site savers, Zambia says globally, women are more likely to experience poor eye health than men. Cataracts, conjunctivitis, and age-related degeneration, AMD, are some of the eye diseases well known to human beings. Cataracts are characterized by clouding of the lens in the eyes. Women's day-to-day activities subject them to greater risk and prevent them from seeking care when they need it. For instance, in many developing countries, women are more likely to take on the role of cooking for the household, and the smoke from the firewood has been linked to increase the risk of developing cataracts. In some societies, women rely on their male relatives to pay for their optical care, and this can cause delay in accessing treatment. Besides causing cloud vision, cataracts may lead to glare, difficult seeing at night, and double vision. Colors may appear faded. Magnifying lenses, anti-glare sunglasses can help one to manage the condition. When cataracts interfere with the ability to drive or do other necessary activities, it is wise to go to the hospital to undergo surgery so as to improve and restore vision. Older women in most cases have low levels of literacy, which means it may take them longer to realize they have a problem with their vision. Several health surveys conducted in Zambia have highlighted that men and women have different health needs. Old age trauma to the eyes, diabetes, smoking, and alcohol use or increase the risk of cataracts in both sexes. So this is where paragraph 3 ends. It has paragraph 4, 5, and 6. Now, this is where the passage ended, I think, for paragraph 3. This was just to give us an example of a passage and see how now we are going to extract the points or identify sentences and then the points, how the points are allocated to a summary passage in order for us to apply that in class. Now, the question that followed the summary was, in not more than 135 words, explain why women are more likely to suffer from eye diseases. The summary has been started for you. Initially, I said, after learners have read through the passage, at the end, there's a question. So this is the question that we are answering. So whatever that we do with the summary is based on this question. Anything that is away from this question is not acceptable. So now the question here is, we need to explain why women are more likely to suffer from eye diseases. So this is the question that we have. And it was started for the learners. It started like women are more likely to suffer from eye diseases because, so learners need to connect this sense to what they are writing in answering this question. When they connect this sense and they have the question in mind, so they need to complete this sentence straight away by answering this question. Now, if you look at the expected answers, there is this one which is coming from paragraph number 1, I think. No, paragraph number 2. From there, where it says women are more likely to suffer from eye diseases because, paragraph 2, we say because their day-to-day activities subject them to greater risk. So this one is a point. Now, if children identified the sentence, then they will not miss out, because the sentence in the passage says women's day-to-day activities subject them to greater risk and prevent them from seeking care when they need it. So that is the full sentence in the passage. Now here we are locating that sentence within some marks. Now we are saying their day-to-day activities subject them to greater risk. So that is a full mark. At the end of this sentence, you tick and give it a full mark. And then the next point that we have is and prevent them from seeking care. So firstly, they're subjected to greater risk. In the same sentence, subjecting them from seeking, preventing them from seeking care when they need it. So you can see that in just one sentence, there are 3 marks. So you tick full mark, you tick full mark, you tick full mark. So in that sentence, that is which says in the many developing countries, women are more likely to take on the role of cooking and so on and so. I think it's paragraph number 3 where it says in some societies, women rely on their male relatives to pay for their optical care. So it is in paragraph number 3. So now you can see that why women are subjected, or why women are likely to suffer from eye diseases because in some societies, women rely on their male relatives. So just that is a point. And then the other part where you say to pay for their optical care, that is another point on its own. And this can cause delay in accessing treatment. So you see that this is one sentence, but also has 3 points. Now, here again, there are certain keywords that learners must not miss. For example, in this sentence, if the word some is missing, we cannot award the full mark because it is not giving us the impression that is in passage. If a child says in societies, women rely on their male relatives, leaving some, then it means we cannot award a full mark because some information is missing. Then in the same paragraph, there is another point which says older women mostly have low levels of literacy. So this also can cause our women to suffer from eye diseases because they have older women mostly have low levels of literacy. So that is a full point, which means in the same sentence, which means it may take them longer to realize they have a problem with their vision. So this is another point. So briefly, we have 8 points from 3 paragraphs. So we go on until the last sentence. So this is how we extract our point. As we need to know that this is how we extract our points. But the truth of the matter is that learners are supposed to be taught how to just identify sentences. And when those sentences are written the way they're done in the passage, they'll not miss out anything. We don't go to class to say, this is a point, this is how we extract points, but we need to simply tell the they have to identify sentences that are answering the question. And that way, they will not miss out any point as long as they have concentrated on how to identify those sentences. So initially I said there could be 20 points or more than 20 or less. So if you identify the sentences, then the examiner now will know where to actually give a point and so on, up to 20 marks. So basically, when we are looking at how to assess a summary. So with this information, I hope we already know this information. It's just a matter of re-emphasizing them in order for us to prepare our learners for the examination and even their future in society. I think for now, I'll end there.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you for the elaborate presentation. At this time, we are going to invite questions or comments. As usual, what you do is you go to options and click on raise your hand. And then you can raise your hand and we point at you and give you a chance to make a comment or ask a question. Time for questions and comments now. Okay, we have one hand. Mr. Godwin Ponde, please go ahead. You can unmute yourself. But Godwin Ponde, oh, thank you. You have unmuted. All right, go ahead, please.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you so much for the presentation. Indeed, I've learned, but I want to find out or just to ask one question that I want to ask.
Yes.
In an instance where we have less than 20 points in the given passage, then we are expecting to award 20 marks
Yes.
Now we find that maybe in that passage you have only been given maybe 15 points. What happens? Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Ponde, thank you for that important question. Here, if you heard me clearly, I have emphasized the fact that learners are supposed to just identify sentences that are answering the question. If you look at point number, I think the first point on the screen, second point on the screen says, and prevent them from seeking care when they need it. You've seen that this is one sentence.
Yes.
But it is broken into two.
Mm-hmm.
So that what we want is to award this somebody 20 marks.
Okay.
So if a child has raised the whole sentence clearly, the way it is, then they'll not miss out on anything. Look at point number 4, which says in some societies, women rely on their male relatives to pay for their optical care. This is another one.
Okay.
Broken into two.
Mm-hmm.
So our intention at the end of it all is to have the 20 marks. So if the sentence has 14, 15 or this passage has 14, 15 sentences, this is how we maneuver in order to give the 20 marks to a summary passage. I hope I've made myself clear, Mr. Godwin.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Any other question?
There is Teresa Mwale. Please, Madam, go ahead. Madam Teresa Mwale.
Hello.
Hello.
Please go ahead.
I'm getting you.
Good evening.
Good evening, Madam Teresa Mwale.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mukuba, for the presentation. I have 2 questions.
Oh, yes.
The first question is, now that summary, not summary, is examined at junior level, at what stage
Yes, go ahead.
I think her network should be interfering somehow. While we wait for her to come and fully express her question, we can go to Ms. Campbell McDonald. Please unmute yourself and go ahead and make a comment or ask your question.
Good evening to you, sir.
Good evening, McDonald.
Sure. Good presentation indeed. Though I missed the first part where it covered
Speak clearly.
The junior section, maybe a section which has been maybe numbered. I was saying I missed the first part where you presented on the part of the summary on the junior secondary. Then now, if the candidate decides to number the points, are we supposed to penalize them for numbering, or how do you handle it?
Okay. Thank you very much. Sometimes if you look at the question paper, it says a connected summary. So whether the points have been numbered, they have been bulleted, as long as they are not in prose, candidates will be penalized. So that we need to know as teachers, that as long as it is not in prose form, it is numbered, it is bulleted, it will be penalized. So that they just need to write in prose, connected summary. Have I answered the question, Mr. Campbell?
Yes, sir, you have. It's only at junior section where maybe the note summary is the one being used.
Yes, at the junior level, there is no harm. Children can number it. Yes, children can number it, they can bullet it, but if they, at senior level, this is where it matters most.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Campbell. There's a hand from IPHO. There is no name, but please state your name because I think it's only the name of your gadget which is showing. Can you unmute yourself and go ahead, ask your question or make a comment?
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening, madam.
Yeah, this is Mrs. Chisanga.
Please go ahead.
We thank you for the presentation. It has been very informative indeed. My question is similar to Mr. Campbell's, where you said if a learner writes the points in either bullet form or numbers, then the learner is penalized. Now my question is, where a learner writes the summary, but not with complete sentences, but just stating the points or just listing the points, does also, do we still have to penalize that learner, or we can still mark the summary and award the marks?
Thank you for that question, Mrs. Sanga. If you heard me in the beginning, I talked about expression. That a note summary or a bulleted summary lacks expression. And because of that, it must be penalized. So even when they don't indicate those bullets here, as long as they're just listing, if there is no expression to make the sentence come out clearly and convincingly, they will still be penalized on the expression. So it has to come out clearly expressed. Then they'll be marked normally. That summary will be marked normally because it lacks expression. Then it has to be penalized at the end of it all.
Thank you. Any other question or comment? Any additions?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Been clarified.
All right. Okay, thank you. All right. Anyone else with a question or a comment? Anyone else? Oh, yes. Chief Lazaro, you can go ahead. I can see your hand.
Oh, sorry, I forgot to unmute myself. Good evening.
Good evening, Chief.
Yeah. a very wonderful presentation. I've really followed and enjoyed it. Very enlightening, and very encouraging, because summary indeed has contributed greatly to our learners failing to score high marks. Because I think as teachers, personally as a practicing teacher, today I've learned a lot, because there are a lot of things that I've not taken into account when teaching summary. And also I've learned today that the summary skills that we teach, those are skills to equip the learners to know how to summarize. But when it comes to exams, I think it's a very different approach altogether. And that's something I've discovered. If you read almost all the books on summary and pressing, including Lazarus Sinkala, English Composition and Summary for school certificate, emphasis is mainly on the summary skills, how to paraphrase, how to encapsulate a long passage into a shorter one, how to, word economy. That is basically the emphasis, which is a good thing as the syllabus stipulates. However, as practicing teachers, I think what I've learned today is that we need to move a step ahead, particularly with exam classes. After we've taught the summary skills, if it is grade at junior, we've taught summary skills in grade 8, we've taught summary skills in grade 9, term 1, somewhere term 2. We're starting now introducing the exam summary skills, because I think I've learned today that these are two different things. The exam drills that to make a candidate identify the points and put them according to the examiner's language, the way what the examiners look out for. I think these two are very different things. And I really appreciate, Mr. President, you've really enlightened me. I thought I should make that submission. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Chief. Alex, please go ahead.
Thank you very much. Are you able to get what I'm saying?
Yes, yes.
Please,
Go ahead, Alex.
All right, thank you. I must, in the first place, thank you people for the wonderful job you are doing. And please keep it up, keep on doing the work you're doing. It is really helping us. I've just joined this program a while ago. I found it already started. However, I have a following question. I think 2 or more. The first question is, maybe you have already explained it, but maybe you need to clarify.
Yeah, there's no harm.
But Alex, can you show your face and remove the video so we can see?
Okay. Are you able to see me, Chief?
Yes.
All right. So I was saying that, all right. I was saying that, I'm asking, is there a situation where at senior level, they ask you to write a summary in 2 paragraphs? Can such a thing happen, as in maybe there's a passage and then they'll say, state in your summary, state the causes and the effect of ABCD. Is that question asking you to write those things in 2 paragraphs? I'm asking this because I need to have full information. There are some groups that I'm leading. So there was a debate at one time saying yes, others were saying no, others were saying yes, depending on the question. So maybe this is the perfect platform that would guide me on whether or not at senior level the summary is requiring 2 paragraphs. And then the presenter was mentioning about giving marks, giving full marks to a certain point. So is each point warranting 1 mark or 2 marks or what in the summary? Because at the junior level, I find that maybe they'll ask you to summarize in 10 lines or 10 sentences. Each sentence may have 2 marks. So that is totaling 20. Please guide on that one. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Alex. When we teach writing skills, not summary skills, but writing skills, we are expected to teach paragraphing. And when we talk about paragraphing, how does it come about? How does a new paragraph inserted into our writing? It's a different point.
Okay.
You have, yes. So when it comes to summary, though examiners don't pay much attention to paragraphing, if a child has written only 1 paragraph, they will not be penalized. But in the case where a passage has 2 views, maybe we are talking about prevention of HIV, AIDS, and also
the
causes of HIV, AIDS. There are 2 views there. Obviously, as somebody who has the writing skills, who definitely do it in 2 paragraphs. Okay. First one maybe causes, the second one prevention. So there isn't much attention that is paid, or there is no particular penalty that is given to a candidate who writes in 1 paragraph, though there are 2 ideas. But it is just ideal for our candidates to do 2 paragraphs in such a case. But if they do 1, they will not be penalized. There is nothing like that.
All right.
Then the second question, where you say how many points or how many marks are awarded to a point raised. There is just a full mark is 1. Okay. And earlier on, I said a passage, a sentence should be clear and it should be convincing. That 2 things that we are actually looking at: the fact which is coming from the passage and the clarity. So if any of the 2 is missing, then that point cannot guarantee a full mark. So it should actually be a point that is coming out clearly as stipulated by the passage. So it must have a stem and the clarity. If any of the 2 is missing, that one cannot be granted, cannot be given full mark, which is 1. There is no way we are going to award 2 marks or 3 marks to 1 point. It's just 1 mark per point, as long as it comes out clearly. If it is not clear, they need to be penalized. If there is a spelling mistake, then that point, it will affect the marking. If there are 2 points, if there are 2 spelling mistakes within the same sentence, which is bringing out that point, then there is no need, there is no mark given. The candidate is raising a point, and then within raising that point, there is a spelling mistake, another spelling mistake. If there's 1 spelling mistake, they'll be given a half a mark. If there's another spelling mistake, it cancels the half, and then that sentence will not be given a mark. So that is how we treat such sentences, Mr. Alex.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah, sorry, host, may I? Hello, host.
Yes.
May I just add on the first question by Sir Alex?
Yes, please.
And allow me to beg to differ. When you look at the scholars, what the scholars, most scholars have said, if not all that I've encountered, including this one, Lazaro Sinkala, composition and summary, Lazarus Sinkala composition and summary on page 154 puts it in bold and he said, and I quote, all summaries should be written in one paragraph. Okay, and that's what almost all the scholars have said. Now, the questions, the way they drafted summary questions, they all say in one connected summary. Okay, write in not more than so many words. That to me emphasize the points that summary should be one paragraph. And the whole concept of
Which page,
summarizing. Hello?
Which page? Sorry, Chief, I have your book. I want to check.
Page 154. It's not my book, it's Lazarus Sinkala's book.
Oh, sorry, Lazarus Sinkala's book, yes.
Yes, Lazarus Sinkala on page 154.
Can I answer?
All right,
Sorry?
please continue.
Yes, on page 154, Lazarus Sinkala says, unless the question stipulates otherwise, all summaries should be written in one paragraph. Okay? And now I'm saying, when you look at the phraseology of the summary questions, they all ask, they say, in one connected, a summary. To me, that entails that indeed it must be one paragraph. Okay? And also, for me, my scholarly argument would be the entire concept of a summary question is one idea. To summarize that one idea, it means it's one paragraph. I think that's I would simplify it that way. I've never come across any questions. I've tried to study the questions, both Cambridge and ECZ. I've never come across a question that has indicated in write a summary in so many paragraphs. All of them that I've come across, they actually demand, basically under any principle, they demand of one paragraph. However, I want to appreciate what the president has said, that at least the examiners are lenient. They don't worry whether, in terms of allocating marks, whether you've written in one paragraph or two, they don't penalize. I think I would want to appreciate that. But logically, when I read the many books that I've read on press and summary, they all indicate summaries should be written in one paragraph. I thought I should add that.
Okay, maybe let me just make a comment on that one. Maybe I would like to raise a point of a correction where it says one connected summary. I think most of the question papers say in a connected summary, not one connected summary. Right, so and so on. Now, initially I said there is not much attention that is paid to paragraphing. But if a passage has two ideas, there is no harm in a child paraphrasing, meaning writing two paragraphs. If they do so, they will not be penalized. Even when they write one paragraph, they will not be penalized. There is no penalty for that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. No, that's very true, Mr. President.
Yes.
Yeah, you are right. The questions, they say, make a connected summary, not make one connected. It says make a connected summary.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what all the questions seem to be saying. So that in itself, I'm using it now to defend the concept of one paragraph. If they ask me, make a connected summary, I'll write it in one paragraph, because if I write in two, it would not be a connected one. That's my argument, Mr. President.
It will still be connected.
In two paragraphs.
There's a
It's
hand,
separated.
Mr. There's a hand,
Eh?
Mr. Kanyama. Dr. Monde wants to add something. He's also an examiner for paper 2
Okay.
English.
Okay.
Go ahead, Doc. Go ahead.
Good evening, people. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, my president.
Good evening, Doc.
Thank
Yes,
you.
Doc. Good evening.
Thank you. We value your contribution to this series, our leader. My contribution this evening is ECZ is very rigid. If you, if I may borrow Chief Sinkalasi words, summary is one paragraph. If you check, that is now scholarly. From the English syllabus, beginning from 1977,
Yeah.
it's a long time ago. If you read, it has not changed. It is one paragraph. I've seen some questions, of course, that have two ideas of maybe advantages and disadvantages. Yes, those are present. But when you read the books in the world about summary, ECZ is rigidly, it's just one paragraph containing that idea. Secondly, on paragraphing my president, what I've discovered is ECZ doesn't need reasoning. If you try to reason, you make your children fail.
Yes.
Here, I liked the way you explained yourself, my leader, that yes, paraphrasing in normal summary writing skill, we must be allowed to paraphrase as long as you understand the idea. There is even a time of shortening, fortnight to 2 weeks.
Yes.
You get that language. That is what summary is supposed to be. But when you come to ECZ, the type of questioning, they want you to transplant exact words that are in that passage. So reasoning there is not allowed. I think, let's see, we have sharp children who can paraphrase it very well. Let's tell them they will fail if they paraphrase. And the paraphrasing, sometimes it brings the issue of spellings and other grammatical connections. But when you are lifting the way ECZ wants us to write, you give a lot of advantage to our students, except for those lazy ones who can't even copy correct spellings. But generally, when we allow them to lift the way ECZ wants, the chances of passing are very high, my president. I thought I should mention this, my submission. Thank you.
Okay, that is a very valid contribution, Doc.
So
I think we have learned something that we as teachers need to take home, especially when it comes to the expectations of ECZ. Now we have no mandate to maybe change their interpretation. So the only way that we need to do is to follow what is what they want in order for our children to pass.
Say something. Alex, you're trying to say something. Go ahead.
actually, I just want to emphasize or to explain this over the question I've raised, because in most cases it brings a lot of misunderstandings, as well as at the end of the day we make our learners fail. So thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Chief Lazaro, for your coming in and talk as well. the point I'm getting is that summary is one paragraph. This is a no matter what, no matter how the question is. So I'll leave this meeting very happy that I've known what I'm supposed to tell the learners. Thank you, Chief. Thank you, the President and the host and everyone who is participating. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. There's another hand. Oh, it's Alex. Your hand is still up. Let me just lower it. Okay, anyone else with something to say? Any other comment or question?
Technopop
Okay.
4, I thought you wanted to say something. Technopop 4. Technopop 4, unmute yourself and say something.
If we are able to rename our devices, we should be able to do so. Let's do so that we are able to identify each other and we avoid calling each other by the name of the gadget. Yes, Technopop 4, I think I've seen you unmuted. Now you can go ahead.
Yes, Technopop 4 has unmuted. Talk.
I'm saying I just tuned in. I was trying to connect, so I'm behind. I'll be able to ask later.
Okay.
Have you gotten me?
But why have you named yourself Technopop 4?
It's the phone. It's the phone. I haven't named myself. It's my daughter who was doing everything.
So correct that impression because we will know you as Technopop 4.
Chief.
Just call me by that name. It's fine.
Okay.
Mommy, come and
Yes.
come and put my name.
Yes.
This one is the examiner, Catherine from Kabwe.
No, I know her. I'm just
Look at
wondering
yourself.
why.
I've known her new name. She's Technopop
And she has
4.
confirmed that. And she has confirmed that's the name we should be using when we meet her.
Thank you.
Hasn't shown. Yeah. Look at this. So
Technopop 4 is there.
don't mind me. Continue. Remove the.
You can mute yourself. Catherine, mute yourself.
We have no Catherine, we have Technopop 4.
Technopop 4.
All right, so it seems we have no further questions or comments. Unfortunately, Madam Catherine still wants to catch up when we are winding up.
She will follow on YouTube.
On YouTube, yes.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, colleagues, would like to thank you for being part of this program. We would like to thank you specifically for the big number that turned up for this presentation. Mr. President, thank you so much for sharing your experience and knowledge with us. And a lot of teachers have been helped This presentation will continue being available on YouTube. We can share with colleagues and we can still go through it at our own time. And this is the essence of this program. Thank you so much for joining us today. And next week, we will switch to poetry with Chief Manda from Literature Paper 1, All Things Being Equal. If there will be any changes, you will be duly informed. Thank you so much and good night.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night. Thank you.
Technopop 4, good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Technopop 4, call me after the meeting.